The discovery that changed everything. You're walking around with ghosts in your DNA, not metaphorically, actually, literally. Every single human alive today, whether you're in Tokyo, Lagos, Sao Paulo, or Stockholm, carries genetic fragments from ancient human populations that science didn't even know existed. These are populations that vanished tens of thousands of years ago, leaving no bones, no artifacts, no archaeological evidence, just traces hidden in your genes. On July 30th, 2026, researchers at the University of California, Berkeley published In Science that fundamentally rewrites human history. Using a breakthrough computational method called TRACE, tracking archaic contributions via ARG estimation, they discovered that modern humans carry DNA from at least 2 unknown extinct human. These aren't Neanderthals or Denisovans, species we already knew about from fossil evidence. These are entirely unknown populations whose existence was completely invisible until now. The study analyzed hundreds of modern human genomes and found 0.5% to 1% of DNA in every person examined comes from mystery ancestors. That might sound small. It's not. It means every person alive today carries genetic memory of an entire lost civilization. This is the most significant breakthrough in human evolutionary history since the of Neanderthal DNA 2 decades ago. The problem that stumped science. Here's the fundamental challenge that kept scientists in the dark for decades. DNA degrades. It breaks down. After an organism dies, its DNA fragments into smaller and smaller pieces, until eventually it's unrecoverable. Most fossils are millions of years old and contain no DNA whatsoever. Even relatively recent fossils, say 100,000 years old, have DNA so damaged and fragmentary that recovery is nearly impossible. For the last 20 years, scientists could only identify ancient human DNA when they had actual fossils to sequence. Neanderthals. We have skeletons and can extract their DNA. Denisovans, we have a finger bone and jaw fragments. But what about human populations that lived even longer ago, or whose bones were never discovered, or whose remains were destroyed by time? They were invisible, completely unknown. The fossil record is incomplete. We only a tiny fraction of the humans who ever lived. The vast majority of ancient humans left no bones, no artifacts, nothing. They simply vanished from history. Except for one thing, their DNA survived in us. The breakthrough, a new way to see the past. The TRACE method is revolutionary because it doesn't require ancient fossils. It works by analyzing the genomes of living humans and looking for patterns that don't fit what we know about modern ancestry. Here's the concept simplified. Your DNA is a mixed-up library. Each book is a chromosome. Each page is a gene. Your library contains books from your mother and books from your father, mixed together in complex ways. Some books came from their mothers and fathers and so on, back through your entire ancestry. Scientists have long known how to identify which books came from which ancestor if Neanderthal DNA. They sequenced Neanderthal fossils and saw their unique patterns in living humans' DNA. But what if you have a book that doesn't match any books you've seen before? What if you find genetic patterns in modern humans that are too old and too distinct to match Neanderthals, Denisovans, or any known archaic population? That's a ghost. That's proof of a population that lived so long ago that no bones survive, but whose genetic signature is unmistakable. The TRACE method works by reconstructing ancestral recombination graphs, essentially mapping out the genealogical relationships between different DNA segments across hundreds of people. When researchers see segments that genealogically trace back to an ancient ancestor that doesn't match any known population, they've found a ghost. The researchers tested TRACE on known Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA first. The method correctly identified these ancient lineages without using fossil genomes as reference points. Once it proved reliable on known populations, they searched for patterns that didn't match anything in the scientific record. They found them. Everywhere. Ghost 1, the African mystery lineage. The most significant ghost ancestry discovered appears to have interbred with early modern humans in Africa more than 50,000 years ago. This lineage is estimated to have diverged from Homo sapiens ancestors around 800,000 years ago. Think about that timeline. 800,000 years ago. Humans hadn't yet migrated out of Africa. Tools were primitive, agriculture didn't exist, cities were still hundreds of thousands of years in the future. Yet there was a distinct human population living alongside our ancestors. Then somehow, these ghost humans interbred with our ancestors. Maybe they encountered each other as populations migrated across Africa. Maybe they competed for resources. Maybe they coexisted peacefully. Whatever happened, they mixed genetically. And then, vanishing into mystery, they disappeared entirely. But not entirely. Their DNA survived in us. People from every population examined in the study carry traces of this African ghost ancestry. About 0.5% to 1% on average. In some populations, particularly those with the ghost population's version of this gene provided some advantage. Perhaps their variant made language easier, or speech clearer, or communication more effective. We don't know yet. But the evidence suggests the ghost lineage didn't just randomly interbreed with us, they contributed genes that our ancestors selected for. Ghost 2, the super archaic mystery. But there's something even more astonishing hidden in the data. Researchers found evidence of a second ghost lineage, one that's far, far older. They call it super archaic because it may represent a population that split from our lineage more than 1 million years ago. This lineage appears concentrated in people with Denisovan ancestry, particularly in modern populations with East Asian and Pacific ancestry. The genetic traces are incredibly ancient, so old that they've survived hundreds of thousands of years of recombination and mutation, leaving only scattered fragments. Researchers suggest this super archaic lineage might have come from Homo erectus, a human ancestor that lived 1.8 million to... This means some living humans today carry DNA from a human ancestor that lived over 1 million years ago. Let that sink in. You might have genetic material in your body that has been copied, passed down, and preserved for over 1 million years. A gene that was in a human body when mammoths roamed the earth, when saber-toothed cats hunted across grasslands, when humans were just beginning to master fire. What this means, rewriting human history. The implications of ghost DNA discoveries are staggering. First, we're far more mixed than we thought. When scientists talk about human evolution, they use clean categories, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, mixed and mingled across tens of thousands of years. Second, we've been severely underestimating human diversity. How did they get there? Nobody knows. The archaeological record is silent, but their DNA tells a story. A unique population lived in the mountains 1,500 years ago, genetically distinct from surrounding populations, and then vanished. Were they absorbed into larger populations? Did they die out? Did they migrate? The DNA reveals they existed, but not what happened to them. West Africa, the ancient mystery population. In West Africa, in countries like Nigeria and Sierra Leone, genetic studies have found signatures of ghost ancestry distinct from anything in the modern population. About 50,000 years ago, early humans in West Africa interbred with a completely unknown archaic population. No bones have ever been found, no archaeological site has been excavated, but the DNA evidence is unmistakable. A human population lived in West Africa, interbred with modern humans, and then vanished without leaving a single artifact behind. An entire civilization erased from history except for the genetic memory preserved in living humans' DNA. Tibet, the ghost ancestors. Tibet presents a fascinating mystery. About 80% of Tibetan genetic ancestry comes from northern Chinese populations who migrated there 4,000 to 9,500 years ago. But where did the other 20% come from? Scientists discovered a 7 to 100-year-old individual from Yunnan who was genetically distinct from most East Asians, as genetically distant from modern East Asians as a 40,000-year-old person from Beijing. This ancient individual appears to be the first representative of Tibet's ghost population, a lineage that contributed to modern Tibetan ancestry but vanished completely from the archaeological record. How the technology works, decoding the past. The computational methods that enable ghost DNA discoveries are sophisticated and elegant. Traditional DNA analysis requires comparison. To identify Neanderthal DNA in modern genomes, scientists needed Neanderthal sequences to compare against. They lined up Neanderthal genes next to modern human genes and looked for matches. Simple. But ghost DNA can't be identified this way because there's no ghost reference genome. The population is unknown. The bones were never found or never preserved. Trace works differently. It uses something called an ancestral recombination graph, ARG, essentially a mathematical representation of how DNA segments from different ancestors have mixed together in modern people. Here's a simplified version of the logic. Imagine tracking a single DNA segment through 100 different people. In person A, it has sequence GCTAA. In person B, it has sequence GCTAA. The same. In person C, it has sequence GCTAA again. These people probably inherited this segment from a recent common ancestor. But in person D, the segment is GCTGA. It's similar but notably different. In person E, it's GCTGE as well. This suggests a different origin. This segment probably came from a different ancestor, one that diverged from the others further back in time. Now imagine doing this analysis for millions of DNA segments across hundreds of people. A picture emerges of many different ancestral lineages. Most lineages match known populations, Neanderthals, Denisovans, modern humans, but some lineages don't match anything in the historical record. Those are ghosts. fragmented the ancient DNA. Old DNA is broken into smaller pieces. Newer DNA appears in larger segments. By measuring segment sizes, researchers estimate when these ghost populations lived. It's like reading a detailed timestamp written in DNA. The questions that remain. These discoveries raise profound new questions. Who were these people? We know they existed. We know when they lived. We know they interbred with humans. But we don't know their bodies, their languages, their cultures, or their names. They're completely unknown except for their genetic signatures. What happened to them? Did they die out? Were they absorbed completely into modern human populations? Did they migrate somewhere else? Did they develop different cultures that diverged from modern humans? The DNA shows they existed and then disappeared, but not how or why. Were they different species? Were ghost lineages separate species that couldn't fully integrate with modern humans, so they eventually died out? Or were they regional variants of Homo sapiens who simply migrated elsewhere? Were they as intelligent and capable as modern humans? Or were they less advanced? We have no way to know. How many ghosts are still hidden? As the trace method improves, and as scientists analyze genomes from more populations, particularly from Africa, Asia, and indigenous populations, how many more ghost lineages will be discovered? Is every modern human a mosaic of dozens of ancient populations? Are we only seeing the tip of an iceberg? What can ghost DNA tell us about modern traits? Already, researchers are finding that ghost ancestry concentrates in certain genes involved in immunity, metabolism, and even language, FOXP2. Did ghost populations carry versions of genes that helped modern humans adapt to new environments? Did they contribute to the traits that define modern humanity? Why this matters. Beyond science. These discoveries reshape how we understand humanity itself. Identity. If everyone alive today carries DNA from unknown ancient populations, what does that mean for identity? You're not just your recorded ancestry. You're part of ancient populations that have been completely lost to history. Connection. The ghost DNA discoveries reveal that humans have been mixing for hundreds of thousands of years. We're not separate, isolated populations. We're one species with deep, ancient connections woven into our very biology. Humility. How many civilizations rose and fell that we'll never know about? How many populations thrived, developed cultures and languages, and then vanished, leaving only genetic traces? The ghost DNA discoveries suggest human history is far deeper and more complex than the archaeological record reveals. Innovation. These discoveries show how technological advancement enables new understanding. The trace method, computational technique, reveals information that was literally impossible to access before. What other hidden histories wait to be discovered through similar breakthroughs? The next frontier. Ancient DNA revolution. We're entering a new era of historical investigation. Rather than depending on the random preservation of bones, scientists can now extract history from modern genomes. Research teams are now systematically sequencing genomes from thousands of people across all continents, looking for ghost ancestry patterns. Studies are already underway, examining East Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, and Aboriginal Australian genomes. What will they find? Possibly many more unknown populations, possibly evidence of migrations we never suspected, possibly genetic contributions to modern traits we never understood. Some researchers even propose establishing a ghost ancestry database, cataloging all identified ghost lineages and making the information accessible. Imagine being able to trace your DNA not just to known populations, but to specific ghost ancestors who lived thousands of years ago. Others are working to connect ghost DNA findings with archaeological and linguistic evidence. Perhaps a ghost population's genetic signature can be linked to mysterious artifacts or ancient languages that archaeologists have struggled to explain. The lost human world. Close your eyes and imagine this. It's 50,000 years ago. Somewhere in West Africa, two populations of humans encounter each other. One is modern human, the population that would eventually spread across the world. The other is completely They meet, they trade, they compete, they interbreed. Then one population, or both, vanishes, migrates, dies out, leaves no bones, leaves no artifacts, disappears completely from the fossil record. Yet the genetic memory survives, passes down through generations, through thousands of years of mutations and recombinations, until 50,000 years later, scientists develop a method sophisticated enough to detect it. That's what ghost DNA represents, an entire lost human world, preserved in the genes of modern humans, waiting to be discovered. The ultimate revelation, the most profound implication of these discoveries is this: human history is far deeper and far stranger than we ever imagined. There were populations we never knew existed. Civilizations that rose and fell without leaving a single artifact. Humans who spoke languages we'll never hear, developed technologies we'll never understand, created cultures that vanished completely, and yet they live on. In you, in every human alive today. Their genetic legacy survives in the DNA sequences that code for your traits, your abilities, your characteristics. You're not just a modern human, you're a living museum of ancient populations, a walking time capsule containing genetic memory of civilizations thousands of years extinct. The ghost DNA discoveries don't just reveal ancient human history, they reveal that human history is far more connected, far more complex, and far more mysterious than any textbook ever suggested. We share the planet with our own ancestors' ghosts, written in genetic code, waiting to be read. The journey continues. Scientists are only beginning to understand what ghost DNA reveals. As the trace method improves, as more genomes are sequenced, as researchers connect genetic findings with archaeological and linguistic evidence, more lost human worlds will emerge. We're at the beginning of a revolution in understanding human history, not through digging up bones or studying artifacts, but through reading the genetic code of the living humans around us. The past isn't dead. It's written in your DNA. It's waiting to be decoded. It's a ghost that's finally becoming visible.